cryptids of California. Number 5. The cactus cat. This strange feline cryptid has been widely reported in the American Southwest, and particularly in the deserts of Southern California. This cat appears like a large black cat at first, around 2 feet tall and 30 pounds, but whatever this creature is, it seems to have evolved a spiky and thorny fur with a branched tail. It also sports thin, razor-sharp bones that run along its forelimbs. This cat is also known to make an eerie noise that sounds like 2 bones are being rubbed together. It was said by travelers to the west, if you saw slash marks on a cactus, it was a warning sign that you were entering cactus cat territory, and it was best to stay away. The cactus cat may look frightening, but according to legends, it hasn't been known to be all that aggressive towards humans, unless it's fired up from a cocktail of fermented cactus sap. The story goes that, as people began to settle the West, frontiersmen described seeing these bizarre beasts coming out at night to slash open cacti, which caused sap to slowly run down over a few days. Afterwards, the cats would return to drink the sap after it fermented. This, of course, caused these spiky felines to become drunk, and they would shriek all night long. If travelers crossed paths with these drunken cactus cats, they would be very wary that they would be attacked by these creatures. The cactus cat had a unique call that could be heard for miles throughout the desert, which pioneers learned to avoid if they heard this cry. Allegedly, from time to time, frontiersmen would wake up and find welts all over their bodies, claiming that in the middle of the night, the cactus cat would come to visit them in their sleep and touch their barbed tail all over them. Thankfully, the cactus cat wasn't known to eat humans, and instead supposedly survived off eating scorpions, other bugs, as well as drinking their precious cactus juice. This odd feline is largely considered a tall tale today, and most believe travelers back in the 1800s were simply misidentifying bobcats, porcupines, or mountain lions, whose call is certainly a terrifying sound. But perhaps there's still an unknown and elusive spiky feline out there getting its kicks from drinking cactus sap. Number 4. The Lone Pine Mountain Devil. Also called the California Mountain Devil, this carnivorous winged cryptid is believed by some to be a cousin of the East Coast's Jersey Devil. Early accounts spoke of these winged bat-like demons that came straight from the depths of hell. This creature is said to reside between the American Southwest and northern Mexico, and is usually described as a furry flying creature with multiple wings that is slightly larger than a human being. It sports razor-like talons and houses a terrifying mouth full of layers of deadly and venomous fangs. According to legend, this terror from the skies is believed to slaughter its prey by attacking the torso and the head of its victim. While most carnivores kill for the meat, the mountain devil is said to only indulge in the soft cartilage of the face and the torso, and in turn leaves the carcass of its prey to rot for scavengers to consume. Early Western settlers, like the 49ers, told tales of these terrifying beasts after numerous carcasses of coyotes and bobcats were found strewn about the desert and the mountain wilderness of the Southwest. In 1878, a lone missionary named Father Justice Martinez wrote about a pack of these creatures wiping out an entire wagon train. It's not clear who first came up with the name or the stories of this cryptid, but the legend of the mountain devils eventually turned into scary folktales that pioneers would tell each other, like finding entire convoys of adventurers, families, and prospectors who had been murdered, faces left unrecognizable by the mountain devil's preference for eating them. Believers in the story of these creatures thought that the mountain devils only attacked those who disrupted the natural equilibrium of the habitat it resided in, and it functioned as a sort of sentinel for that area. It was thought by some that, although this animal was fiercely territorial, it generally kept to itself unless dealing with a threat. With the massive influx of people moving to this part of America in the late 1800s and early 1900s, stories of the mountain devils began to wane, and most attribute human expansion to the disappearance of this fearsome predator. Though, to this day, there are still occasional sightings of a spine-chilling flying cryptid stalking the remote areas of the Southwest. Were these creatures real? Or were they simply a hoax used to scare wary travelers during the westward expansion of America? It's up to you to decide. Number 3, the Riverside Monster. This frightening cryptid, also known as the brain tickler of Riverside, was a creature straight out of the unknown. On November 8th, 1958, Charles Wetzel had a fateful encounter with the strange and unexplained. As he was driving home that night, he was closing in on the North Main Street Bridge that crosses the Santa Ana River. Fortunately for Wetzel, he noticed the usually dry river had flooded over the bridge and the road, which brought him to a full stop. In that moment, something in the air changed, and without reason, the radio station he was listening to turned to static. In that same moment, Wetzel noticed something jumping out of the underbrush off the side of the road, which landed right in front of his car. As Wetzel's headlights illuminated the being, he described it as looking like something from Halloween. This unworldly thing, he said, was not human. He described it as lanky, with arms longer than anything he'd seen and legs that seemed to stick out from the sides of its body. The monster's skin also appeared unusual. It was scaly and leaf-like, almost reptilian in nature. And perhaps more frightening was its head, described as being round and scarecrow-like, with no ears, a protuberant mouth, and green glowing eyes. To Wetzel's horror, the creature noticed him in his car. It started screeching and reached out its long arms from its position in the road all the way to his windshield and began clawing at it. In a state of fear, Wetzel reached for his .22 caliber pistol that he stored under his seat, but realizing the only thing separating him from the monster was the fragile glass windows of his car, he instead decided to floor the gas to get out of there. By this point, the creature was on the hood of his car, and once Wetzel hit the gas, the creature fell to the ground. In that moment of fear and panic, Wetzel kept going and ran over the creature, whatever it was, all the while feeling it scrape underneath the car and hearing its screams and gurgling noises, never once looking back to see what he had just run over. Once free of the situation, Wetzel hightailed it to the nearest Riverside police station to report the incident. In the aftermath of this encounter, police officers recorded seeing scratches on the hood and windshield of Wetzel's car, and smears of something along in the undercarriage. When the authorities arrived at the scene with bloodhounds, there was no evidence of anything out of the ordinary. The following night, another driver reported a similar encounter with something black and scaly. Since then, the town of Riverside, California has had no further reported activity of this terrifying and ghoulish creature. Some believe this lanky humanoid was simply a misidentified vulture, while others theorize it could have been an alien due to the static on Wetzel's radio, which is a common phenomenon reported in UFO encounters from motorists. So just what was the Riverside Monster? A bird? An alien? Some other unworldly entity? Whatever terrified Charles Wetzel that night was not seen again after 1958. So in the end, the world may never know the true identity of this terrifying beast. Number 2, the BILLIWHACK monster. There's a decades-old urban legend of a chimeric beast that is said to stalk the countryside around Santa Paula in Ventura County, California. For years, local teenage students from the Santa Paula High School have claimed to be tormented by this strange and unbelievably muscular humanoid. The BILLIWHACK monster is typically described as being part ape and part goat, with long claws, gray hair, and ram horns atop its head. This monstrosity has been reported to violently attack passing cars by hurling 50-pound rocks at them, leaving major damage like large dents and scratches all over. Over the years, other witnesses have claimed to see this strange beast wielding a large club as it roams the countryside and the roads of Ventura County. Between the 1950s and 1960s, a number of instances were reported where people had been attacked by a fearsome and unknown creature. The first known instance was sometime in the 1950s, when a young boy had reported being attacked by a large and weird animal near the BILLIWHACK Dairy. The boy survived this encounter with only scratches on his arms and back. Later on, a local teenager braved the abandoned dairy to investigate, claiming to witness a, quote, snarling, hairy man in a hole. And then, in 1964, hikers in the area were harassed by the monster out in the wilderness for hours on end, and when the hikers made it to safety, they reported it to the local news, which in the following days made headlines. Other confrontations with this thing tell of motorists having the hoods of their cars pounded in by this incredibly powerful beast. This strange creature was most frequently seen around Aliso Canyon Road and to a lesser extent Wheeler Canyon Road, which is right near the old BILLIWHACK Dairy, or what some locals call the Scary Dairy. This almost century-old property is largely considered ground zero for the monster. This place was once a state-of-the-art dairy facility in its day, but has since fallen into ruin and disrepair. There are believed to be several underground rooms and tunnels at the BILLIWHACK Dairy, which have led people to suspect there could be plenty of places to hide for an abominable monster. The BILLIWHACK Dairy was started by Swiss immigrant Auguste Rubel, who moved to Ventura County in 1922 after serving in France for the American Field Service during the later half of World War I. After living in America for a couple of years, Rubel and his family started the dairy in 1924. The dairy eventually ran into financial trouble and was sold. The facility continued to operate as a dairy until 1942, when locals began to believe that the U.S. government was using this place to develop top-secret weapons for World War II. Though the dairy was sold, according to the story, Rubel had secret connections with the OSS, or the Office of Strategic Services, which was the precursor agency to the CIA. According to the legend, the OSS kept in contact with Rubel and commissioned him to work on a secret super soldier program beneath his old dairy operation when America entered the war. The OSS was known to be involved with a myriad of illegal experimentation on civilians, such as brainwashing, effects of drugs on unsuspecting victims, and the study of disease for biological warfare, to name a few. Naturally, this purported connection between Rubel and the OSS allowed them to use the facility to engage in sinister experiments that resulted in the creation of the BILLIWHACK monster. It was said that Rubel was looped back in for the war effort and sent overseas for espionage missions for the OSS. However, Rubel died in Tunisia in 1943 after the vehicle he was in ran over a German landmine. Allegedly, the experiments continued until, much like Frankenstein's monster, the BILLIWHACK monster turned on the scientists which experimented on it, and the monster made its escape and has since roamed the hills around Santa Paula, California. So is there really a horned humanoid beast lurking about in Ventura County? Or is this simply an urban legend? The jury is still out on this one. Number 1. The FRESNO NIGHTCRAWLER. Also known as the Fresno Alien, this bizarre creature was first spotted in a suburb of Fresno, California in 2008. A resident of the town named Jose was woken up in the middle of the night to the sound of his dogs barking. Jose checked his security camera to make sure there wasn't an intruder causing his dogs to sound off. To his shock, there was an intruder, but it wasn't like anything he'd ever seen before. Jose watched in disbelief as his security monitor showed an otherworldly being making its way across his backyard. This thing could best be described as a pair of walking pants, and whatever it was defied logic and seemed to glide and crawl as it worked its way across the backyard. It was a stark white color, appearing to only be a couple of feet tall. Its only limbs were two awkward legs, and it appeared to have something resembling a head on the top of its body. It's reported that Jose took his security tape to the local TV station, and when played, the reporter interviewing him took a video of Jose's video, rather than making a direct copy. And because of this reason, the available footage is of poor quality compared to the original tape. When this footage was released to the public, MUFON and other paranormal investigators got on the case, some claiming this was anything from a cryptid to an ancient Native American spirit, an alien, or simply a hoax. But sometimes the truth, as they say, is stranger than fiction. In a 2010 episode of Sci-Fi Channel's Fact or Faked, the investigation team tried to recreate what happened that night at Jose's house. Despite various experiments with puppets, they were unable to reproduce what was seen on Jose's video. However, debunkers on the internet have managed to recreate a modest interpretation of what appears in Jose's video that night by manipulating a pair of pants down a clothesline. This has caused some to question the original video's authenticity. This 2008 case wasn't the last time we'd ever hear from the Fresno Nightcrawler, though. In 2011, a security camera in the Yosemite National Park caught something late one night. Caretakers of the park had been experiencing vandalism recently and had set up a camera to catch these vandals in the act. But instead of vandals, they captured something far more strange. When the footage was reviewed, it clearly showed a pair of two-legged beings without arms that were very pale, making their way awkwardly across the frame. One appears much smaller than the other, suggesting it could be a potential juvenile being, and both creatures seem to move in a rather unearthly way. Some believe this is the smoking gun evidence for the Fresno Nightcrawler, but skeptics say this was simply achieved with CGI and is nothing but a hoax. Beyond this, some researchers have claimed these beings have shown up in Native American folklore in West Coast tribes such as the Yokuts, the Miwok, and the Ohlone, with legends being known all the way up into Canada's West Coast First Nations peoples. One of the major reasons for this is the presence of wooden sculptures said to be near a DMV in California, and these sculptures appear to resemble the two-legged Fresno Nightcrawler being. However, most believe there is no real connection between these sculptures and the mysterious entities known as the Fresno Nightcrawlers. Similar creatures have been allegedly sighted in Ohio, like the Carmel area creature, as well as reports of similar beings seen in Poland. So, just what could these things be? Are they an ancient spirit, an unknown animal, or simply a hoax? In the end, it's anyone's best guess as to what they could be. And that was my list of the top 5 weird cryptids of California. Do you have a favorite out of these 5? Were there any other California cryptids I should cover in another video? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, share, and smash the bell icon for notifications on future videos. And if you're new to the channel, or really, this is the first time mentioning it on YouTube, but I'm excited to announce that Strangeology now has a Patreon. I have to thank my early patrons for supporting me with the work I'm doing here, and without their help, taking Strangeology to the next step really wouldn't be possible like this. If you'd like to become a patron member and receive some awesome rewards, head on over to my channel page and follow the Patreon link. Any pledge is very much appreciated. You can also find Strangeology on social media. Make sure to follow me over on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. And also be sure to check out the Strangeology podcast for more content exploring the wonderful world of weird. And that's it for this video, everyone. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and keep it strange.